What's up, everybody? Evan here for Grips.com, continuing with Project Get Me Stackin. So, as you guys know, recently the project has been focusing around tournament play. We've been doing a lot of reviews of people's tournaments, seeing how we get from the beginning to the end, final table, and that victory. I've been hearing word that a lot of people have been getting results, people have been doing better at tournaments, people are building up their bankrolls. So I'm really happy about that, but I want it to work a little bit better because we're all about efficiency here and results at Grips Poker Training. So I figured it would probably make sense to do a Project Get Me Stackin, which revolves around tournament play. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the finer elements of tournament play, and that is knowing when to gamble. Take you to the question. Hey Evan, great to hear you cashed in the World Series of Poker main event. Did you directly buy in or played satellites? I bought in directly. I gave a little bit of action to a couple of friends, but I had the bulk of it. I like to trade run good P's, as I call them. Get people who are really lucky to buy a piece of the action, and then hopefully I run better. So far I'm like 3 for 3 with that, so I'm gonna keep going with it. Although I will say the satellites to the main event are some of the best value tournaments you can find in Vegas during the summer, both the 500s and the 1000s. Question. My tournament play is going really well, but I keep struggling with calling all-ins in a tournament. Can you make a video about it, and can you talk about these situations? You have a small stack and a big stack goes all in. You have a big stack and a small stack goes all in. You have a small stack and another small goes all in. You get where he's going with this. There are about 7 of them. And we also want to know about multi-way all-ins with a variation of stack sizes, big versus bigs, etc., etc., etc. We know there are chances to gamble. The question is whether or not we take them. Keep on stacking. Rudolph Van Ruij, Roy. Hope I got it right. I don't know. Anyway, this is something I've been thinking about a lot since I've been playing a lot of tournaments lately, and I got a lot of really good insight to share with you guys. Let's get into that presentation. So, there are a couple of schools of thought in tournament poker. The first one that was made popular by books such as Making the Final Table by Eric Lindgren and Every Hand Revealed by Gus Hansen. This philosophy is about trying to find every edge you can, no matter how small in a tournament, and being willing to bet the house. That's all the chips, that's the stack. And as long as you're at least a 51% favorite in any given situation, you can expect to eventually win a tournament when you have a streak of good luck by following the strategy. And this was, the analogy they used was that Las Vegas was built up by a series of small edges, small edges, small edges. And if you can put in enough volume and get into enough situations where you're a small favorite, eventually you're going to win your fair share of them and you're going to get the big score. Now the other philosophy is one that places a much higher value on tournament life. Players like Phil Hellmuth stand by this philosophy, saying that just by being in the tournament, they have such a huge edge that they don't need to take big gambles. They don't need a huge chip stack to be able to work their way through a big field. Players following this style believe that they can make their chips by stealing, re-stealing, and playing a good small ball approach. Which philosophy is right? Which one's the way to go? Well, that all depends on you. I think both approaches are a winning formula for tournaments if implemented correctly. And ideally, a mix of both will give you the best shot at getting those winning results. Now, to address the question, facing an all-in, to call or not to call. First, I want to touch on cash games very briefly, just to clarify. They're much simpler, and a concept from this will also kind of carry over, leak into the tournament thing, which will hopefully just give you some greater perspective on it, something more you can relate to. So in cash games, you want to make the decision that has the highest expectation, and that generally means just going with the math. If your equity, or chance of winning, against all your opponent's possible holdings, their range, is higher than the pot odds you're getting, then you generally want to get involved. For example, you have a flush draw, 2 cards to come, about a 35% chance of winning, and the pot is laying you 2 to 1. You got to call $10 to win $20, or maybe you got to call $10 to win $25. In that case, you're going to want to gamble. Odds are that you're going to win are greater than the odds that the pot's laying you. Or maybe you have a 50% chance of winning, like you have a pre-flop coin flip and the pot's laying you 1.5 to 1 because there's already a bunch of dead money in the middle. Then you pretty much always want to call. This is just what winning poker is all about, staying ahead in the numbers game. The one time I can think of that's an exception is if perhaps your goal for the evening isn't to make as much money as possible. You're not trying to maximize every situation and squeeze out every penny. If you're just setting out to have a fun night, but you didn't bring extra reloads to keep playing, maybe you want to pass up close spots and small edges in the interest of playing a longer session for certain. If you gamble, sometimes you're going to win a big pot, and some percentage of the time you're going to be left going home. But if you just do the small ball thing and avoid these big pots, you know you're going to be in the game for a while. Now, if you're a professional, you want to play the math. But not everyone is playing poker to be a pro, and these other factors are worth considering. Now, getting more specific, let's talk about tournaments. From the MTT strategy guide, you should know that the main goal of a tournament is it's to win the tournament. Flat out. First place, big money, let's get it. Now, what are our chances of winning the tournament? How do I know? Well, based on how many players are left in the field, what your stack size is relative to everyone, what the average skill level left in the field is, and such, it's always possible to get an idea of your odds of winning the tournament if you're willing to take the time to think that through. If you have an average stack with 50 players left, your odds should be at least 1 in 50 to win the tournament. If you have more chips than average, those odds would be higher, maybe a 1 in 40 chance, and if you had less chips, the odds would be lower. But it is not in direct proportion to your chip stack. Doubling your chip stack does not double your chances of winning the tournament. Also, how good the other players are left in the tournament really makes an impact. What their style is, whether having a ton of chips gives you a lot more ability to crush these people, or whether you can get the job done with a small stack. There's a lot to consider. Caching is also of some value, especially when you get really close to the money bubble. If you can always keep in mind what your chances of winning the tournament are and getting paid before every decision you make, you'll be on the right path to being smart with your all-in plays. Because the real question is, do I need to gamble to get what I want? Or can I get what I want without engaging in this gambling? When you're faced with a decision about whether or not to call an all-in, the first thing you want to figure out is, what are your odds of winning against all of your opponent's possible holdings? What are your odds of winning against their range? You can use things like PokerStove and Equilab to figure this out. Next is to compare your pot odds. When there's a huge favor in your odds of winning, generally you just take the gamble. There will be very few times where you wouldn't want to take a massive edge. 60%, 70%, 80% edges do not come around very often, and if I have a chance to double up getting those odds, or significantly chipping up with those odds, I'm generally going to take them. It's when we're looking at the 45, 55% range that things get a little closer. Or, maybe you're on the final table and you get a chance where you could flip with the other big stack, and you're both the big stacks. Well, that might be a spot where you don't want to take the flip because you're guaranteed to get at least like 4th or 3rd place with your stack already, and you have a pretty good shot at winning the tournament. Taking out the other big stack would obviously increase your odds of winning, but maybe first place isn't your main priority once you get that close. You want to look at your stack before you do anything. How much flexibility do you have in your stack? How much of the arsenal of weapons do you have access to? Will you be able to maneuver through the field with your stack? Can you put pressure on your opponents and find ways to chip up? Or are you just sitting on a stack where all you're looking for is a spot to jam all in or reshove over and open? In general, the less flexibility you have, the more inclined you should be to gamble to get that flexibility. So ask yourself, if you call and win, What will your chip stack be? What sort of flexibility will you have? How much higher will your odds of winning the tournament be? Likewise, do the same exercise for if you take a gamble and lose. Will winning a gamble make you more better off than losing would leave you worse off? And does it matter? Do you already have a good shot of winning the tournament, or are you already pretty much out? This is what you really need to consider when deciding whether or not to take a close spot. Small stack versus big stack, big versus small, small versus small, big versus big. It's a little too general to talk in terms of this whether or not you should gamble. What is your position in the field with your current stack? What is the average stack? What is a valuable stack? If everyone in the tournament is floating around 8 big blinds, then having 15 big blinds is a monster stack that gives you a lot of leverage. Whereas when the average stack is, say, 40 big blinds, 15 bigs isn't so special anymore. The main thing to consider is how likely you are to get your desired results, which should be winning the tournament, with your current stack versus your potential stack if you win, versus how much those odds would get hurt if you lose. If gambling and winning can give you a monster chip lead, but losing would just leave you in the middle of the pack, still in pretty good position, gambling is probably worth it, since you'll be able to push people around with those chips you gain, and amassing those chips is worth so much. The value of all those chips you can get is worth so much. If, however, you currently have a decent stack like 20 or 30 big blinds when average is around 15 to 20, and taking a gamble could leave you with 5 big blinds if it doesn't work out, you probably want to pass up on that spot and wait for one of your own, since it kind of becomes that's your all or nothing spot. And ideally, you always want to find a second chance if you can. Obviously, when it comes to open shoving and reshoving, these are factors that should be considered as well. But unlike calling all-ins, there's always the possibility that your opponents will just fold and you'll pick up the chips without having to run the cards. When calling all-ins, gambling is a certainty. The question is, what are your odds of winning? And is the potential payoff great enough to outweigh the potential loss? As you get deeper in a tournament, each chip becomes more valuable because your odds of getting that top prize are really increasing. Whereas early on, when the finish line is still far off, each chip is not worth as much as the chips you already have, because just being in the tournament is what's important. As for multi-way all-ins, the considerations are the same. The only thing that will be different is your odds of winning, since you're playing against 2, maybe 3 hands instead of 1. So now hopefully you'll be smarter about your gambles. You can look beyond you gotta look beyond just your hand and your opponent's possible holdings. You have to look at all the other factors that really go into a tournament. Because this isn't about each hand in isolation. It's how is this going to affect me in the big picture of getting what I want, which is winning this tournament. You know, what are you trying to accomplish in the tournament? Know what your goal is in the tournament, and then your decisions will be more in line with that. At the highest level, your goal should be to win the tournament, but that doesn't always have to be the case. Maybe you want a seat to a big event, and cashing is very significant for you. It will do big things for your bankroll, even a min cash. In that case, your inclination to gamble should reflect that, and you should be less inclined to gamble once you get to, the bubble area. But early on, you do what you can to try to get in there and build up chips. You don't want to wait forever to get in. You got to play poker to do well in tournaments. And with that, and knowing how to gamble correctly, this is how you maximize the odds of getting what you want. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you can apply this knowledge in your game. If you have any questions for Project Get Me Stackin, please email them on over to evan@grips.com with the subject line Get Me Stackin. Hopefully, I can answer your question and help you get stacking. I hope you enjoyed this video, And if you're finding this series helpful, please subscribe to the channel below, show your support, click that red button. Videos come in like almost every day, so why wouldn't you subscribe? And as always, get active, get talking. That's how you learn the most. Comment section is wide open, and I would love to hear what y'all have to say. Thanks for tuning in. More tournament reviews on the way. We got 2 final tables going on this week, and then we're going to be looking at, I'm not going to tell you, but it's going to be one that you guys are real excited about. So this has been Evan for Rips.com saying peace.